No, order. Question number 6. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, this question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he have confidence in the Associate Minister of Health, the Honourable Peseta Sam Lotolinga? If so, why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's Inga, not Linga, but anyway, yes, because he's worked hard to improve health outcomes for New Zealanders.
Question.
Supplementary question. Right
How
Honourable
can he
Winston
have
Peters.
confidence in the Associate Minister of Health, who, in this House, claimed yesterday that the intangible cost of smoking is some $11 billion, or 61% of the health budget?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the point the Minister was making yesterday is the cost of smoking on society is enormous, but all of that is outweighed by the cost on the individuals. And by the end of this question time, one further New Zealander will have died of a smoking-related illness. Personally, I think the government should stand up and try and protect those New Zealanders.
Question.
Supplementary.
Well,
Order. I haven't called them out. I'm just waiting for a bit of silence. Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Well, if that's true, Prime Minister, and smoking is as bad as he and the Associate Minister of Health said yesterday, then why doesn't he get some guts and ban it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think history has shown that for very addictive substances, banning is an extremely difficult thing to do. In fact, most of the addictive services will tell you that ultimately for someone to want to stop doing something, they themselves have to want to do it. So yes, of course, the government is doing the right thing, I think, in terms of, for instance, raising prices. And we know that that has the biggest single effect, about 4 to 5% reduction per year for every 10% increase in price. Mr. Speaker, in the end, 5,000 New Zealanders die every year from smoking-related illnesses, and maybe that member should get some guts and try and help those people.
Supplementary question.
Order. Order.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
How can he have confidence in a minister if that minister's intention is to reduce the harm from cigarettes on the one hand, targeting $1.8 billion in taxes on smokers, and on the other hand, guesstimates total Crown revenue in 2020 as being $2 billion from these taxes, but can't guesstimate the number of people who are going to give up smoking?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the evidence we have over the last 5 years of price increases in smoking is that it's reduced by about 4 to 5% a year, so about a 25% reduction. We know that the biggest impact it has is on young people. We know that from our data that disproportionately larger groups of Māori and Pacific people smoke, particularly Māori people smoke, and in our view, by taking all of the steps that we are, we're trying desperately hard to encourage people to stop so that they can live a longer life. And I think in the end, coming from someone who saw my mother-in-law die at a very, very young age of smoking. She was 53. She didn't get to see our kids growing up. Personally, I know that when she was 53 and on her deathbed, she would have given everything to have made an earlier decision not to smoke. I think there are a lot of New Zealanders in that category.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston
if that's
Peters.
the case, then why will the government not forgo billions in taxes into its coffers on the smoking taxes and get some guts and ban it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, I mean, bans are a nice idea, but history has shown bans don't work terribly well. The government is taking steps where it can, but in the end, ultimately for people to want to give up smoking, like any addiction, people themselves have to want to do that.
That member wants to create a
Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
I seek to table a library analysis of the massive billions in smoking taxes, an analysis of page 104 of this budget document.
Order. No. Well, the budget document's been tabled.
No.
Are you
it's the
saying
library document I'm tabling.
It's a library. Explain the library document. If it's just.
It is a library document into Crown revenues and the 80% taxes cost on a packet of cigarettes, by their analysis, of this document. It's the library document that I want to table.
I'll put the leave. Members can decipher whether they want the information or not. Leave is sought to table a library document. I presume it's the parliamentary library. Is there any objection to it being tabled?
Yes, unreliable source.
Question number 7.